We're live. Yes, now we're live. Hello, world. How is it going? What is going on in the world? But this interview is not about that, is it? It's not an overview of what is going on in the world. It is Global Media and Information Literacy Week. Oh, I should close that.
Now,
1 second.
hello, world. How is it going?
Oh, close there. Now we're again. And we got distracted with our own tech. Okay. We're now present. I am Joe, and this is Imasha Costa, freshly graduated from UCC, but overall rock star because of so many things. And I think one of my favorite things is that you're a writer and a poet.
Yeah. So like I work as a journalist at the moment, which is great. And like being a South Asian woman doing journalism as well is something that, like, you know, has been like a fever dream kind of thing, because like it's not something that is recognized within our culture, being a journalist and being a woman. Because it's usually the men who go off and write the stories because they're men. But it's very interesting to be like, I am a South Asian woman. I am writing these stories because I want to help to write these stories for people who aren't able to write them, or who don't have the ability to or the capacity to. And I think it's very important as media to be able to represent these stories and give voice to the people who need their stories to be shared. So that's one of the great things I love about journalism. It's just amazing stories that you can get when you listen and you talk to people. And I think that is so important because you build like a level of trust and stuff. It's just great. I love it.
Oh, this is marvelous. So I'll repeat again because at the start we got a bit distracted. So it is day one of Global Media and Information Literacy Week 2022. It seems so complicated, and it is. You know, it's all very exciting for the likes of you and myself because we're in the media space. I make media, you write for a media outlet, and you just explained the power of stories as well. So how would you explain what is media and information literacy to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old?
I mean, like, media is basically social media, for example. Like, you have so much different information being put up, and then you have news outlets, you have newspapers, you have radio, you have TV. It's basically information that is put on a platform for people to read, watch, listen, just so it's easier for people to digest. My favorite form of media to ingest would be news articles online or on the paper. But it's different for different people. Like, you know, media, you don't have to restrict yourself to taking in one form of media. You can listen to the radio. Radio's great crack. Like, you get so much out of it. You hear actual people on the phone talking to presenters, talking to hosts and stuff, and telling their stories. And even TV, like, I grew up watching BBC. I'd see people on the screen being like, okay, this is what's happening in the world. And when you're trying to explain it to a child about what media is, it's basically someone's telling a story or someone's reporting a story. It's like reading a picture book, really, but this time you're either listening or you're reading the words, and it can be as very little of words, or it can be like a lot of words being used. And I think it's literally just a story. You're listening to a story, and that's how you should ingest media. It is a story, a lot of it are based on actual facts. It's real life stories. If like that's how I would explain it. And like when it comes to information literacy, it's a terminology I'm very new to. I will say that I'm not a professional in understanding what information literacy is. I'm still learning what it is. But I think it's being able to understand that these stories are always like, there's facts to it, and making sure that the story you're reading is factually accurate. It is the correct thing that you're reading, which is difficult in this day and age when you get all your facts and news from different outlets. Like, you don't know who's reporting the right thing. And I think it's important to realize that because of how big the internet is and how easy with a Google search you can find anything you want, it's important to realize who your sources are and how to listen to those sources, if you get what I mean. So
Yeah. Yes. And then I do want to acknowledge, and I know you would join me in acknowledging the fact that all this is incredibly fine for people who have access to education, first of all, who have literacy, and then also then access to internet, or even wherever you're getting your information from.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like growing up, I did not personally have access to the internet till I was 15 or 16. That's because firstly, we couldn't afford to get the internet, and it was very new to us. So how we got our news was like, people telling, it was like Chinese whisper basically. But what I was really grateful for growing up was that my father would always put up BBC on the TV. BBC, Al Jazeera, those two were our news sources. That's how we knew what was happening in the world. So that was our only point of information about what's happening in the world, which I think was great. Like, growing up at a young age, I was introduced to the news. I was being told, this is what's happening in the world. This is what's happening right now. Like, that's how I knew it. But when it came to stuff that you couldn't gain access to, like stuff that is happening, say, like, in a country where it's currently in war, for example, yes, you have your regular news source that you listen to every day reporting about it, but there are some stories that you can't access. So when I did get access to the internet at like 15, 16, that was when I was fully able to understand situations more, because I had more access to more sources. That's one thing I learned growing up. But then again, not everyone has that opportunity. Not everyone has the opportunity to finish high school, to finish school, like primary school even, because either education is not prioritized, and therefore lack of education, leads to lack of like understanding the media, understanding where your sources come from. And I think that is a big thing, like especially like my mom's from Sri Lanka, my dad's from Bangladesh, and that is a major thing there, because girls my age or younger than me don't get access to third level education, so therefore they're not able to access information, really good information like journal articles or the news or anything, or even learn how to use the internet, So a lot of the news that they'd hear be passed around in the villages like Chinese whisper. And we know how Chinese whisper works, like, you pass on, but you always leave out an information, or you add an information, like, could be factual, could be infactual, like it's just this whole thing. And I feel like it is very important to acknowledge that education does play a huge role in understanding media and understanding information. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't have access to education.
And this is very powerful to me to listen, because as I said earlier, and if people missed it, you newly graduated from UCC.
I did, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm the
so
first in
many
my family.
challenges and hurdles. So congratulations.
Thank you so
You
much.
know,
Yeah,
bravo,
like
bravo.
for me, it's a massive thing because I'm the first in my family, first woman in my family really to graduate from a third level institution, which is insane. Like, it was tough, like, moving to a different country, learning like how to integrate. It was difficult, but it really was worth it because my mom, like, she pushed me. She's like, you need to do really well, like, you have to, because you know why you're there, you know what you're doing, you need to make sure that you get the education that you deserve. And my mom's all for education because she didn't have that opportunity. She didn't finish high school, but she was able to send both her kids to finish off high school, and now one of them's finished their degree, one's just started college. Like, she's proud, like, so
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
important.
yeah, and I'm proud. I'm just so happy.
Thank you.
I'm just proud to be in a city where there's, yeah, there are young people who make the most of what's there. And yeah, I think I am more proud because I'm a mother, and then, I'm curious to see what my child does
Yeah.
with their life. So yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, before I get all emotional, stay on topic, stay on topic. Now, theme of this week, Global Media Information Literacy Week, is nurturing trust, a media and information literacy imperative. This day is observed by the UNESCO, and they have a concept note for this theme. And I'm going to read an extract of it. And it's a report of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, says that 12 commitments were made by world leaders. Among these commitments, he highlights the values of trust and solidarity as being the glue for social cohesion and social breakthroughs for the common good. However, the harsh reality is that the trust factor is being eroded. Increasingly, people are turning their backs on the values of trust and solidarity in one another, the very values we need to rebuild our world and secure a better, more sustainable future for our people and our planet. The reasons of this phenomenon vary and include rising disinformation, hate speech, inequalities, lack of fairness and transparency, including in digital spaces. So that's the extract, okay? But then I'm just like, this is all great on paper, and some of it is so obvious to some of us, right? Now, what I think to summarize, the lack of trust is upholding oppressive narrative. This is what I've concluded, right? So then my question is my conclusion more or less accurate? And then if it is so, how can we, between you and I and all other media makers and creators, how can we do better at gathering and amplifying the stories of over-excluded people?
I think one thing that really helps cover those stories is having the people who understand the situation write those stories. So yes. Like in journalism, especially now, I've been seeing in media, especially, a lot more people of color getting involved. And when there are more people of color, they are able, and you're writing a story about, like, oppressed narratives, especially when it comes to people of color, you yourself are able to have that empathy with the person who's narrating their story. And that empathy is there when you're writing that story. And I think that's very important because no one can really write that story as well as the person who is, sorry, my words, like the story can only be written in a way when empathy is there. And that empathy comes in when you start that conversation with the person. And I think like that starts building trust. I think they work hand in hand in a way, in my opinion anyways, because like recently enough, I wrote a piece about like, you know, these lads who moved to Cork from Sri Lanka, and the only way that I could communicate with them properly to get their story was communicate in my own language. That's how they were able to share their story. And I think that's very important to understand, is that not everyone can speak English. Not everyone can communicate really well in English. Yes, they might speak it, but they can't communicate their emotions, their values, why they're doing what they're doing because of that language barrier. And I was delighted that I was able to speak Sinhalese and that I was able to communicate with them in Sinhalese to get their story. And they left Sri Lanka because of its failing economy, basically. And they came here because they had to look after their kids back home. And this is how, like, in a way, when you have more people from diverse backgrounds writing these stories, there's more empathy. You write the story better, you communicate it better, and it also helps you build that sense of trust with not only the person who you're writing the story about, but who you're writing it for, your audience, if you get what I mean.
Yes, I do. And what I'm taking away from it is that empathy is important when you are, even for a journalist and a reporter to be able to write it. But then empathy, however, it has to be built. It has to be developed. It's a muscle that needs to be trained.
Yeah.
You know, and it is one of those things that can actually grow exponentially over time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, it's important to always have an open mind when you're listening to a person and like understand where they're coming from, understand their narrative, because not every, like, when a person talks to you and shares their story, they're trusting you with their story and writing their story with as much clarity and justice like you can is important, because like not everyone has the tool that you have, the power, like it's not a power, it's more like this, there's a word, the resources that you have to be able to communicate their story.
Yes.
Like reporters and journalists and media makers are all in this one like scenario where they have that opportunity to give justice to a story, and they can, because of the infinite resources that they have, and the reason that they're in that job is because they know they can do it. So I think that is an important thing to like understand and distinguish as well, because like as a media maker, as a writer, as a journalist, you have that space. And when a person gives you that story, they're trusting you with that story. They're making sure that you will do that story with justice. And you end up doing it for them. Their story is heard, their story is shared. And that's important.
Yes. I want to build up on that and say that so much of everything that you're saying relies on the skill of listening. And it's also relies on the skill of shattering or even recognizing our own values and our own internalized oppression, unconscious bias. There's so much work, even for a reporter. You know, when I studied journalism years ago, ethics, we had a whole module on ethics. I'm sure you have had it as well. And then when you get down into the arena, and then like I've never worked as a journalist, but then when I look at people around me, when I look at how articles are being written, and I sometimes wonder, where is the ethics? What happened to ethics? Why is it written this way? And why is it that no one is calling it out? However, this morning I read a tweet where a journalist has called out his peers for not doing research when writing about people seeking asylum and refuge in Ireland. And this seems to be a very direct correlation. But even when you're reporting violence, even when we are talking about the housing crisis, whatever be the issue that we're talking about, even when we are talking about celebrity weddings, there's got to be ethics, isn't it? But then I know this for a fact, even when I'm doing Good Day Cork work, how much the editor side is always in a constant conflict with the salesperson, and I am that person in my brain. It's like too, I'm like this, but then you know what? Somehow, because it's just me, the editor wins, and that's fortunate. But it's not the case in so many places, in so many different media houses. They just do not have the budget to have reporters in places where there is shit going down and it's just not being reported. So there's loads of reasons why that happens. And within that limited resource, limited construct, I think between you and I, we're trying to encourage our peers, other media creators, writers, journalists, reporters, editors, everyone to take the time to listen.
Yeah.
Would that be okay to say?
Like, I get where you're coming from. Like, listening is a crucial thing to everything, because like, if you don't listen, you don't understand. It's like you can hear the story, but it's a different thing to listen to the story. And I think that's an important thing to listen.
Yeah, so we could do better by listening. Anything else we could do better about? Anything else that would help us to do better?
Sorry, my mind just drew a blank.
but yeah, which means that listening is very, it's one of the pieces is at the foundation of it. And then also ensuring that when we're talking about facts, that the facts, everyone says you've got to keep it real. But I'm still like, facts, yes, it's important to keep it real, but also the way it is, the vehicle that you use to deliver the facts, they've got to be understandable. Would that make sense as well?
I think so, yeah. Like, using accessible language, I think, is important, because not everyone, like I said, had the opportunity to complete a third level education, or like English is maybe not their first language. There's so many different barriers when it comes to like language, written language especially. Like, there are days that I still struggle with the written language of English, because it's a weird language in my opinion, and I speak it, but I struggle with it day in, day out. Like, sometimes I'm just like, all right, what word, how does the tenses work sometimes, like, because I think in a different language, I write in a different language. There's just so much going on in my head. And there are times where I'm just like, how do I make this clear? How do I make it to the point? How do I make it accessible? And I think it's important to be able to be like the audience you're writing for, not everyone is as literate as you can be. Like, and I think it's important to be like, these people you are writing for, your audience, they need to understand what you are writing. So using more accessible language, more clearer language, instead of looping around with words and stuff, would really make it easier for people to be attracted to reading the news, to listening to the news, and like, watching it as well. I think that's important.
Yeah, it's not about dumbing it down. Everyone keeps saying it's not about dumbing it down. When
It's
we
not
say
about that.
using accessible language, we're
Mhm.
not saying we have to dumb it down, because
Yeah,
that's what's happening sometimes. You dumb it
yeah,
down and people miss the finer things. So
absolutely.
yeah, so it's not about dumbing down. It's about
It's,
using accessible language.
yeah, no, and
And
it's exactly like it's like dumbing it down doesn't make it easier because you're losing words here and there. Like important words are like will set the story, will set the facts. And I think um when people are like when they're like, oh, it's is it about dumbing it down? I'm like, no, or someone else will be like, no, it's not that, just accessible language. Like you see it like every like day to day, you see it with like if you're especially in photojournalism, which I really, really see coming about. It's really cool. There are photos being used as like, you know, to tell a story, but also you have the alternative text with it, which I think makes it really accessible because not everyone can, you know, identify what's going on in the photo. And like for myself, anyways, I like to know what the description is, what is happening in the photo. And I think that is important as well. And like, especially with visual journalism, visual media, it's important to have the alternative text, to have that accessible language for everyone.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, the Digital News Report Ireland 2022 says that some 58% of Irish consumers said they were concerned about fake news / misinformation. 58%, again, statistic, like what does 58% mean?
Yeah.
For me, it means over half of the population.
Yeah.
Okay, which is a lot of people.
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
Right? Which in many ways, it's good that a little over more than the half of this country is concerned about fake news and misinformation. So 2-3 hacks of how to improve our media and information literacy. Shoot, over it.
I think one thing that really people need to watch out for is getting your news off of social media. That is one thing. Like, yes, Twitter is a great source, like, you know, great source to identifying what's going on, like, you know, keeping up to date. But one thing I've learned as a student journalist is that you don't use Twitter as a source. Like, as in, even in like college work, you'd be like, social media is great. You can like, you know, dive into different like discussions with your brain and stuff, but never like, you know, source it. And if you do source it, have something to back it up. Like, you know, it's not just one tweet.
Yeah.
There should be like, you know, different like facts that back up that tweet, or like, you know, contradict it, like, you know, whatever you need to make sure that the source that you're using from social media is backed up, is factually correct. And I've noticed a lot of the times that Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, any other social media site, there's always something happening and you're just like, wait a second, is this correct? Is this right? Like, you know, is this happening? And most of the time it could be incorrect. It could be like the facts might be wrong, something might not, like something might just not be wrong and like not be right, and it just gets passed around. That's the thing. It gets shared, it gets likes, it gets comments. Like people see it and being like, that is news, that is what's happening right now, because of how accessible social media is. And I think that's why people are more prone to going on social media and getting their news from social media sites rather than the news. But then again, a lot of the times, a lot of people find that social media has more of the facts than news sites would. There are situations happening across the world that a lot of news organizations have not covered, which is unfortunate, like, you know. But then again, it also comes down to a lot about accessibility, being able to go to the situation and figuring it out themselves. But I think like I would rather, like, a few hacks that I would personally do is, like, if I want to figure something out, go to Google. Google's great sometimes. And they have different tabs. They have they have images, they have news, they have videos. Type something up, look up the news section, you get news articles, like from sources, from legit sources for news. And I think that is important to look out for, because they have the facts, they know what they're reporting, they've done their research. It's important to look at stuff like this. And like, even if you have a trusted news source that you feel like you can constantly go to all the time, download their app. They have an app. It's just like, in your Play Store or App Store, just go into it, download the app, and you get like push alerts from those news sources telling you, oh, this is happening right now, or this is happening, like with all the facts, with all the research. And it's always great to expand how many news sources you read. Like, I personally don't just read one news source. I read like 15 because I want to see if the facts are there, like, if they're all reporting the same thing. One person could be reporting something else while another one reports something else, like, so it's important to make sure you have a variety of sources, because one person could be reporting something when someone else is reporting something else. So
yeah, and having different new sources to access news helps us, for those who have time, helps us to build more simple word would be, your opinion is built a bit more sound. It's not one-sided. So there's so many sides to anything. So it's nice to be able to know from all different as many different perspectives as
absolutely
possible.
Like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. So we both agree on that. So to narrow it down, use the news tab on Google to get, or any search engine to get your news. Avoid getting news from reshared content on social media, unless it's a news website. News websites use social media as a megaphone to push out news, just to be clear, everyone. Okay. And just think a little before you click and retweet and reshare, just to make sure where is it coming from.
Like, my favorite thing though is, like, I don't know if you've had this situation, but I'd be thrown into a group chat with like all my South Asian family members. And you can see them, like, sending stuff on me, like, this is happening. And you can see it's been forwarded many times, the message itself. And you're just like, all right, Auntie, I'll let you think what you're thinking right now. That's okay.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you might have been.
Yes, absolutely. There was a ridiculous meme that went across as an international tweet, a thing about how Ireland, something to do during COVID, and how Ireland does not believe in wearing masks. I'm like, this is a meme. And my mom is like, oh my God, I'm so concerned. I'm like, in India, we call it the WhatsApp University.
No, I understand. Because, like, it's great. That's the thing, that you get thrown into a group chat on WhatsApp. And you can tell, like, you're in with the aunties and the uncles, and you're like, all right, this is great. Like, good morning here and there. And then you get the forwarded many times messages, and you're like, all right, okay. I see.
And then the activist in me, the feminist, the media maker in me, everything is just like, I expect better than this. You're my family. It's like, personal. Like, stop it. Just stop it.
But that's the thing though. Like, my mom, right? If someone sent her a text like that, she'd believe it, because that's one of the only platforms she uses. She uses WhatsApp, she uses Facebook. That's it.
Yes.
And, like, it's accessible for her, because, like, if she was to use, like, Instagram or, like, say Twitter, she wouldn't have a clue how it works at all. And, like, her Facebook is so tailored to what she likes to watch because of the algorithms. She doesn't really, like, when I was like looking at her Facebook one time, I was like, I'm curious to see what goes on your social media, ma'am. And it's very interesting because like every second post you'd get a news article, but it's not from a source that I would recognize as reliable, if you get what I mean. Like, or you'd see it on someone's updated profile, like one of their updates being like, oh, this is happening, oh, this is happening, be concerned about this, like, you know, and my mom would truly believe it because that's how she accesses her information. You know? So,
yeah. So for those who have time, doesn't matter where you're accessing your information, just question it. Please question it. Yes. Okay. And in the meantime, on the other side of this whole information disseminating world, peers in journalism and reporting and in broadcast, we're, between you and I, we have concluded that we're all going to do better at listening and using accessible language. Would that sum this up?
yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Imasha. Thank you. It was really nice to chat with you, and I look forward to meeting you in person sometime soon. Yes. Take care.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna pause this recording. And I am going to stop the live stream. Bye, everyone.